Okay. Let's pull up the patch notes here. Oops. We have to add. Hold on. I don't know if this is what I'm looking for here. No, not quite. Please hold while I struggle. There we go. Okay, so we have the patch notes. I'm not gonna go over everything because there is too much to talk about. But we can at least address. Oh, I would like to start with the skill gems. So we can talk a little bit about some balance changes there. I'm going to pull up PoDB as well, so we can take a look at some of these changes here. So they mentioned here in this first gem, modifiers from supported skills pierce all targets, modifiers granting additional projectiles and set cusp projectiles from supported skills to chain an additional time from terrain per projectile they would have gained. So that is incredibly interesting. Or in this instance here, they say Glacial Lance. I think that entirely opens up Glacial Lance for making a build with now. Now, I'm curious what other skills are projectiles that don't gain bonuses from additional projectiles. A single copy of your spear. Modifiers number of projectiles only affect the maximum number of lightning bolt projectiles. Splits towards when consuming a frenzy charge. So I'm wondering if the change there to Glacial Lance is also going to apply to Lightning Spear. Because it also just fires a single copy of your spear. So it very well could be ricocheting now. Some additional projectiles that only fire one. I don't think there's a whole lot. I have winter. I don't think that initial... It says an initial eye projectile, which does not hit enemies. So I don't think that's going to ricochet at all. I would be very surprised. So not a lot. They only give the one instance here, so it may be that when more skills come later that they're setting it up that way, but we'll have to try it out with Lightning Spear and see. Because so far it just looks like it might be these two. This is a really nice change here. Skills which have a mana cost of 0 now display this cost. This allows players to distinguish between skills like default attacks, which do not have a cost at all, and are thus unaffected by any plus cost modifiers, from those which do not have a base cost, but with 0 base value, which are affected by all plus cost modifiers, even if they are different resource costs, like adding life to the skill with a base cost 0. So this is going to be really nice. And I don't fully comprehend all the different possibilities now, so I know there's a lot of different 0 cost skills, but we'll need to find out more about what the different resource costs being added are. I believe this is a change in part due to ward coming. So if we add a ward cost to our skills that do not have a cost, they can now cost ward. Otherwise, that was probably going to be a bit broken, having your basic attack or what have you be able to use some of these ward supports without a downside. I don't play crossbows, so I don't know what's going on there. All command skills now have 50% movement penalty, previously 70%. That's nice. Be great for some minion builds. Bonestorm no longer having the sustain tag. I'm not sure. Let's see what tags it has now. Spell AoE, projectile, physical channeling. Gotcha. So it sounds like because it's no longer a sustain skill, it might be one hit crit. Or when you channel the spell and you release it, either all the projectiles will crit or none of them will. That's my understanding of what this change is going to be. Comet nerf is understandable. It is less of a nerf if you were using it uninfused. But I'd say it's about 15 to 20% nerf if you were infusing it. Yeah, so that's about a 25% nerf at the top end for a level 11 gem. And I need to do the math there to find out what the changes there. But it's a significant nerf to the infused version of the skill. It was very strong. I wish they made different changes to it. I wish they addressed making it have a faster cast speed and significantly reducing its damage and increasing its area of effect. I think it would have made it feel better to manually cast the skill. That's That's my only concern with the skill, is it's kind of just being used on a cast on crit basis. I don't see a lot of people using it otherwise. With these additional repeat changes on the Chronomancer, it could actually see some play, because Chronomancer is going to get about a 40% more damage multiplier effectively, with their 20% chance to repeat and 20% chance to echo. But with a slow cast speed, it's not going to feel super great. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of the time you get that echo or you get that repeat in the instances where you didn't need it, where you one hit tapped everything, and then you're not going to get it when you do need it. Call the week. This is a greatly appreciated change. Having the skill do more damage and be a little bit faster, about 15% faster, is going to allow you to actually use the skill before some enemies are cullable if you support it with some damage supports. I don't know if you will get the frenzy charge if it kills them, even though it doesn't cull them. So there is... I was doing some testing with Killing Palm, and I think I was having issues with that, but that may have been Killing Palm hitting initially and then Charge Staff getting the kill. Not entirely sure. Requires more testing, but this is great. This is a great change. Might actually use Call the Week in some builds that require some frenzy charges. If nothing else, just a nice little gap closer. I might use a banner now. The main issue I had with banners before was the area was just pretty small. So having some additional area to that is going to be nice, and then you can add some increased AoE to it as well. Could be good. I have to try it out and see. Earthquake, I haven't played it since launch, so I don't know how it feels at the moment or what changes it's gone through, especially because I missed the last leak patch notes. So this seems like it's going to be a really nice buff to Earthquake. Pretty decent buff. It's a bummer, but I kind of saw that coming. With being able to get certain reservations on items now, like we saw that internal rage implicit on an amulet in the release trailer, definitely can get around that 100 spirit reservation or deal with it in other ways, but kind of saw that coming. With some of the other nerfs that they made to some rage support gems and other ways, I don't entirely feel like this should be a 100 spirit reservation. I think it should be a 60 spirit reservation and require both weapon sets. That just seems like it was a bug. I don't know. Let's... Because I don't think it... Yeah, it doesn't say anything about doing it before, so that's just a bug fix. But they put that on the skill changes. Because I'm sure people had gotten used to that. So Flame Breath getting an energy gain penalty similar to Incinerate. That's... I'm interested to see what they mean there. Fire Breath? Flame Breath, that's what it is. Okay. So it consumes Rage. But my question is, are they changing it so it doesn't cost mana, and so it instead... Well, let's look at Incinerate really quickly to compare. Yeah, Incinerate doesn't have a mana cost. It just gains fuel. And it has an energy gain penalty similar to Incinerate. But I thought you already couldn't gain Rage? Cannot gain fuel. Are they talking... Oh... I think they're talking about the meta... That makes sense. So... Cast on Elemental Ailment, for instance. I think what they're doing here is, because you can so rapidly hit or rapidly crit enemies, they are giving it an energy gain penalty, so you can't proc the spells as quickly. That makes sense. Fortifying Cry now only consumes 1 stack when you detonate a shield wall to create a shockwave around each shield wall segment. Fortifying Cry shockwaves from a single shield wall cannot hit the same enemy multiple times. Rip. Shield wave now deals 5 to 7 added physical damage per 15 armor on shield, previously 6 to 8. So they did hit shield wall pretty significantly. I'm gonna send this to my friend really quickly, because they were playing this last I saw them to clear the campaign. So shield wall, big nerf to single target there. Might still be decent for mapping a little bit, but that's quite unfortunate. I know it was very strong, but I feel that if they're going excuse me, if they're going to nerf it by preventing it from the shockwaves overlapping, that hitting it in its damage is also overkill. I think that was just overkill. Now grants up to 2 more fragments per shot. Previously 20% more physical damage. So at 20% quality, you're getting 2 more fragments. Fragmentation rounds. You fire 10 fragments. And it, I believe they can hit, they can merge. So I don't know if all of them. Okay, they can, it does sound like they could all potentially hit, but I don't know if that is a net neutral, because I don't think it's going to be very easy to hit all 12 bolts. but with the Gemling Legionnaire changes, that alternate quality could be an interesting new thing. Very, very interested to see what the Gemling Legionnaire changes are. Freezing Salvo. Got a nerf. It was freezing pretty well, but I don't think this was necessarily justified. I don't think Freezing Salvo was the big culprit of freeze buildup. Gathering Storm now causes perfectly timed dash to explode any temp spell on hit, creating a massive shockwave that deals 564 to 869 attack damage at gem levels 13 to 20. Ground is left in the wake of the Tempest shockwave, previously on a perfect dash, with a radius of 3.2 meters, turning precise timing into a devastating area clearing combo. Perfect timing shockwaves can now only hit enemies once per skill use, and no longer interact with objects created by non-Tempest Spell skills. Shockwave limit is now 50. Quality now grants 0 to 20% longer perfect timing window. Previously, more shockwaves per use. So, longer perfect time window it's alright. The skill had a pretty generous window to begin with, even when you were using the perfect timing support. The change here to Gathering Storm is, I think, fairly interesting with the changes to Tempest Spell itself. So Tempest Spell can now be ancestrally boosted as though it were a strike skill, and its maximum number of active bells has been increased to 3, previously 1, greatly improving its combo potential. A shockwave now deals less damage, 45 to 119% of attack damage at gem levels 3 to 20, previously 6 to 132. It can now trigger once every 0.3 seconds instead of 0.25. So we definitely have a nerf to its damage, trigger rate, and its attack damage. But being able to get 3 bells out at the same time without using overabundance is really great. It can be ancestrally boosted as if it were a strike skill, and ancestral boosting for strike skills targets 2 additional nearby enemies. So if I'm understanding this correctly, we put down 3 bells at the same time if we ancestrally boost it, which is pretty strong. Ancestrally boosting a skill. Let's go to support gems, and let's go with strike. This will ancestrally boost a skill once every 3 seconds. So that's not too bad. Crescendo will not work because it does not perform a final strike. We can't add combo finisher because it already generates combo. I'm wondering if we can build up 12 combo on Tempest Spell and use 3 bells in a row for bossing, or if we're gonna have to hit 4 times bell, hit 4 times bell, hit 4 times bell. Because if we can build up to 12 combo and drop 3 bells in a row and then Gathering Storm, I think that would be ideal. because otherwise we're not going to be able to have 3 bells up at the same time to explode all of them with Gathering Storm on a boss, unless they had ads for us to summon them with ancestral boosting. Unless we are just not hitting the bells while we are building up combo. Because the bells explode after, I believe, 10 hits. Yeah, it destroys after 10 hits. Its duration is 6 seconds, so I think 6 seconds will probably be enough time for us to build up enough zoom out a little bit. Yeah. Oh, I didn't actually... I have never actually seen that more area of effect for the knockback it would have caused. That's actually very interesting. Wonder how much AoE we can get on it by using the wind skill. Wind blast. Let's drop. Yeah, we can just drop. Actually, just drop Ghost Dance because it only has the one support. Easier to do. Yeah, so I'll have to test a little bit now how it works with the AoE that we can get on the bell based on the knockback. But even if you're not using Wind Blast, you could use Whirling Assault and maybe add some knockback to it. Would be some nice defense there. Okay, let me... So, that was Gathering Storm. Taking a look here. Yeah, Ghost Dance. The interval between gaining Ghost Shrouds is no longer a duration. It now has modifiers to cool down recovery rate also applied to Ghost Shroud gain frequency. It also now has when hit, lose a Ghost Shroud. And regenerate energy shield equal to 2% of your evasion per second. Ah, okay, it is 2% of your evasion per second if you have lost a Ghost Shroud recently. So, looking at Ghost Dance here. Currently, we only get 5% of our evasion when we consume a Ghost Shroud. We will be getting more energy shield per Ghost Shroud consumed if we are getting hit. If we don't get hit multiple times in a row, getting rid of our Ghost Shroud. So, because we are regenerating 2% of our energy shield equal to 2% of your evasion rating per second if you have lost a Ghost Shroud recently. So that just means in the past 4 seconds, if you've lost a Ghost Shroud, regenerate 2% of your evasion per second. So that could give us up to 8% of our evasion as energy shield when hit. It is a longer cooldown, but modifiers to cooldown reduction will now apply to Ghost Shroud frequency, so we can actually play a build that stacks duration and use Ghost Dance effectively by using cooldown recovery. So I can see this going down to about 7 seconds using cooldown recovery 3. Still not as good as the previous one, and it won't be as good for situations where we are being pummeled to death. So I think this was an understandable change, and I'm interested to see how well it does, but it is definitely a nerf in its effectiveness for being mobbed. Grim Resurrection now has a cooldown, 1 second cooldown. So Grim Feast, while active, your reviving minions store a percentage of their maximum health in a collectible Grim Remnant on death. Using Grim Resurrection consumes the life you've collected to revive up to that much total life of dead minions. So 1 second cooldown. I'm not sure if there was some abuse case going on here, but and I also don't play minion build, so I don't know how big of a change this is. No longer give more freeze buildup. I guess that's understandable. It was freezing pretty well. Sad to see the more attack speed go, but 20% increased attack speed is still pretty decent. But it's definitely not a more multiplier. Lightning Arrow. I don't know what they're doing here. This seems like it was intentional. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the combo. So why am I struggling with this? Not chaining. Lightning Rod. So you'll still be able to use Lightning Arrow on Lightning Rod and have multiple Lightning Rods at the same target, but you can no longer use LMP, I think, to have it chained to the boss. On, say, if you hit a ice wall or something. The triggered moonbeams are no longer considered melee skills. That seems like a nerf for sure. So those aren't going to get any scaling from melee supports. No more AoE scaling from AoE nodes. Magma barrier, nerfing shield builds again. This is pretty cool. I didn't know that it could even use Plasma Blast. I thought Mirage Archer was just allowed to do bow and spear skills. But it does also do crossbows, so that's cool. Interested to see what people come up with for this. I think detonating arrow has the most use case, but definitely interested to see what people do. I didn't play this league very much, so I don't know how good that is. Mirror of Refraction, granted by its series rule unique staff, now has modifiers to cooldown recovery rate also apply to mirror appearance frequency. So jury's out on that one. Oil Barrage. Mana cost has been reduced by 18%. Oil Barrage now has a mana cost per second equivalent to the initial mana cost of Oil Barrage. Oil Barrage now deals 10% more damage at all levels, while Empowered Oil Barrage now deals 10% less damage at all levels. Empowered Oil Barrage now consumes a power charge every 1.5 seconds to continue channeling, previously every 2 seconds. This was a very powerful skill. I can understand the nerf. I am sad to see that the power charge consumption is going to be more frequent, though. Parry. Area of effect has been changed to more closely match its animation. No longer has bonus attack distance, so I don't know if this is a buff or a nerf. It's not super clear. Poison Burst arrow poison duration is now 3 seconds at all gem levels. Previously 3 to 4.9 seconds at gem levels 1 to 20. Quality now grants 0 to 10% more magnitude of poison inflicted, previously 0 to 20. Definitely a nerf. I don't know. I didn't follow a lot of builds this league, so maybe they're thinking poison builds were a little too strong, because I did see some other nerfs to poison skills throughout. Pounce now has a cooldown of 6 to 5.1 seconds at gem levels 3 to 20, previously 4.9 to 4 seconds. So cooldown nerf there. Ravenous Swarm now has modifiers to cooldown recovery rate, also apply to swarm spawning frequency. I don't know if people are using this, but they definitely seem keen on people using it. It never seemed very strong to me. Is it just yeah, it is a minion poison skill, and we can't spread that poison as far as I understand it. New swarm every 6 seconds. So we could scale the duration as hard as we can, and then get as much cooldown recovery as we can. Unfortunately, a lot of the cooldown recovery on the tree also comes with less skill duration, or at least one of the passives does. Ren fixed a bug where Lightning Charge Ren was scaling twice with levels. The base damage has been increased to compensate. That Lightning Charge Ren now deals 130 to 405 attack damage at all levels. Wait. Fixed a bug where Lightning Charge Ren was scaling twice with levels. The base damage has been increased. This looks like a nerf. What are you talking about? Am I wrong? Lightning Charge Ren now deals 130 to 405% attack damage at levels 1 to 20. Previously 120 to 586. That seems like a nerf to me, not increased. Anyways, Resonating Shield got that nerf. Saw that in the Seismic Cry. Or not Seismic Cry. Fortifying Cry. My friend just replied about the patch notes. Okay. Rolling magma now changed 3 times at gem level 1, previously 2. Scaling up to chain 5 times at gem level 20, previously 4. That's pretty nice. I haven't played the skill, but a buff I think is always nice. It's going to do more of what it does at level 1. Might be pretty decent to start with. Rolling Slam now has a +1 second time to total attack time, previously +1.5, so it's quicker. The first slam now deals 75 to 272% of attack damage at gem levels 1 to 20. Dang. It's a sizable nerf. And the second slam deals 150 to 543% of attack damage at gem levels 1 to 20 previously. Yikes. Okay. So it's faster. It's definitely faster, but boy, did they nerf that damage. So in theory, they reduced its attack time by 33%. So is this a 33% nerf? It might just be. So we got 75 to 72. So we got 347. Let me break out a notepad here. And then at the first slam doing 90 plus 367. I'm doing this wrong. I should just be taking the top end numbers. So 735 minus 543. So 192 735 divided by 192. So they nerfed its damage. It's about a 40% reduction in the top end damage. 3.8%. Or sorry, it's a 38% reduction in its overall damage. But they did nerf the attack time down to 1 plus 1 second. So I'd say we're probably looking at about a 20% nerf, because you still have your startup attack time and ending attack time that gets added onto this. But it had it before. So it's like a 5% nerf if you're just spamming the skill over and over again. It's definitely gonna suck if it was one-shotting enemies before and it doesn't now because of this. But if you're using it for bossing at all, Shattering Spite, granted by its serious contempt. Unique Spear now has 50% less magnitude of damaging ailments you inflict. No longer has life leech from explosions with at least 15 bloodstone lances this instant. Once again, I did not play the skill, so I am not sure how impactful that is. Where are we? There we go. Shield Wall now deals less damage. RIP. Shred Quality now grants 0 to 20% increase attack speed. Previously 0 to 10% more attack speed. Increased, used to be more. Seems to be what they did across the board, getting rid of the more attack speed. Alright, Snipe. Snipe now deals 121 to 312% of attack damage at gem levels 3 to 20. Previously 133 to 343%. So we got a nerf here. And Explosion now deals 484 to 1,449% of attack damage at gem levels 3 to 20. Previously 1,358 at the top end. So we got a buff to Snipe at the top end. Explosion. Icy Blast now deals 764 to 3,067% of attack damage. So we get a buff at low levels. Kind of surprising. It was very strong at low levels. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's a nerf. So it does less damage now at the low levels. And it does slightly more damage at the top end, maybe meaning it scales higher as well than before when you add more plus to levels. Icy, and it now has 33 to 50% more damage with hits for explosions originating from unique enemies at gem levels 3 to 20. Previously, always 50%. So we're definitely going to be doing less damage in the campaign, and until we get those plus levels. And then Icy Blast explosion radius is now smaller by 0.2 meters from 3.2 to 3. Spell Totem can now be used while moving, and it has received updated in animations. I wonder if people are reusing this. Seems like it could be fun, but generating the charges can be a little tedious. Supercharged Lamb now more clearly states it has a fixed attack time and cannot be modified. This is purely a description change. All right. Tame Beast summons now deal 40% more damage at gem level 9, scaling up to 84% at gem level 20. Now immediately summons newly tamed beasts if you have enough spirit. That's a cool change. Tempest Bell, we already talked about that change. Toxic Growth now fires 5 pustules, previously 4, with a limit of 5 pustules, previously 12. Okay, so one shot is all you need. Quality now grants fires 0 to 1 pustules and plus 1 pustule limit, previously 0 to 2, 0 to 2. Alright, so Toxic Growth now caps out at the one shot, and probably going to be getting a little less damage if you can't stack them up now. Thrashing Vine updated the description to clarify how frequently it spawns vines. This is not a functional change. It's nice at least that we get to see how fast the vines are going to be spawning. Time of need, the interval between blessings is no longer a duration, and now has modifiers cooldown recovery also applied to blessing frequency. Okay. That was definitely something that was being abused by less cooldown stackers. So it's good to see that they brought the interval time down. It probably could have gone down a little bit more than this, because the healing I don't think is enough to justify. But being able to stack less cooldown recovery to get this to happen multiple times a second just didn't seem great. Volcano now has a base critical chance of 8%, previously 5%. I do think Volcano needed a buff. I haven't tried it extensively, but glad to see it's getting buffed. Whirling Assault now grants 0 to 20% increased attack speed, previously more attack speed. So it is getting a little bit more of a nerf than the other skills. I believe we look at Ice Strike. It's getting 0 to 20% attack speed from 10% more. So we're losing 5% more attack speed here in this calculation. So that's okay. Not my favorite, but that's okay. And Wing Blast Shockwave now deals 25% more damage at all levels. I hear Wing Blast could put out some decent damage, but probably did need a nerf buff. All right, I'm gonna get more coffee, and then we can start going over the support skill gem changes. I'll be right back. 2 minutes. I'm back, and I did not mute myself. Let's move on to some support gems here. While I am doing this, no. Okay. Unleash, Expand, Salvo, and Freezing Salvo supports all now use the same concept of seals, instead of each having their own version. This means standardized rules for seals will be consistent for all cases, resulting in some behavior changes. Supports now grant seals consistently, all have the seal category. So I'm a little Freezing Salvo supports. I think they just meant the Freezing Salvo skill gem here. And these 3 supports. So that's that's interesting. And if we open Path of Building and it wants to work on stream, it doesn't really want to work on stream right now. Okay. There is a passive on the skill tree that gives seal frequency, so that's pretty nice. And depending on a few things, it might result in a monk freezing salvo build being something I want to check out. I also think Abyssal Lich could probably do it pretty well, because they get a lot of projectile speed and you can get some damage there. But they're quite a bit further away from a lot of the good projectile nodes. Freezing Salvo and Salvo Support previously had restrictions that a relevant skill could not gain seals while performing that skill. This is no longer the case, bringing them into consistency with other seal mechanics. Salvo Support previously gave a seal every 2 seconds up to a maximum of 3 and provided 2 projectiles per seal. It now gains a seal every 1 second up to a maximum of 6, providing 1 projectile per seal. That is going to be nice, more consistent, to at least get 1 or 2 additional projectiles, depending on how quickly you are using the ability. Salvo does, I believe, make the projectiles fire in random directions. So you'll still have to deal with the random aiming, but it's kind of a net neutral change there. Salvo Advancing Storm now can support any storm skill under any conditions rather than only spells you use yourself. So it sounds like totems and triggered spells can now get the benefit, which is nice. Arjun's Medal now grants 25% chance to load a bolt into all crossbow skills on dealing a killing blow with supported skills, previously 100%. That seems very strong, having it be 100%, just never needing to reload while clearing a map. So I guess this is somewhat understandable, but I do think it's probably not going to be used very much now. Not a crossbow expert, so its Ares and Patience can no longer support persistent skills. Let's take a look at what that support gem does. Lose 25% maximum life, mana, and energy shield when you use the supported skill. 100% increased cooldown recovery rate. Wow. That's nice. But it can no longer support persistent skills, so let's look up what the persistent skills were. Oh, this is the support gems. So persistent, and is there a so it wouldn't be able to use stuff like Wind Dancer, wouldn't be able to do Ghost Dance. Makes sense that it couldn't support those, because you don't really have to pay the consequence for them. It would be nice if it could support Blink, because Blink is something that you do actually have to use over and over again, and they could have it consume your resources when you blink. But that's, I guess, understandable. I imagine it's not going to work on... Interesting. I wonder what its use cases are going to be now. Probably just like barrage. Not a whole lot of skills I see. Big nerf here, 50% nerf. Bater's Vengeance. When you freeze a target with supported skills, for each 2 rage you have, you and allies in your presence. Crazy line there, you and allies gain 1% of damage as cold damage for 15 seconds. Previously, for every 1 rage you have for 20 seconds. So for every 2 rage, 1% cold damage. So it's going to be a 15% damage buff if you have invested nothing into rage, but you do have your cap of 30 rage. Could get pretty nice for rage stackers. I know on my werewolf build, let's take a look here how much rage I have. Or my shapeshifter build, I should say. It's not going to tell me how much rage I can get right now. I believe it was 60 plus rage. So if you have, I believe the other skills are 20% gains. So if we go to Ice Bite, we get 30% here, 25% here. So if you have above 60 rage, or you just want a more consistent buff, or to buff your allies, the Vengeance is going to be better because it lasts longer and it's going to buff your allies. So we'll need to make that consideration for if you're trying to buff allies. Otherwise, if you can freeze consistently, definitely still go with Ice Bite too. Brink 1 can now be cut as a level 1 support gem. Brink 1 being stun buildup from supported skills cannot reach 100%. Hits with supported skill cause 30% more stun buildup. That's actually really nice for staggering palm. Not to use it on staggering palm, but to use it on something like wind wave. And then get your stun off with staggering palm. Culmination 2 no longer has combo count loss for supported skills, occurs 50% slower. Now has supported skills lose combo if you generate no combo for 6 seconds. Previously 4. Supported skills can now gain up to 10 combo, previously 20. And now have supported skills deal 40% more damage per combo, previously 2%. So you're going to get the combo stacks quicker and do the same damage at those max stacks. With getting 10 combo, you can use some support gem, or no support gems. There's some passives on the skill tree that will grant a chance to get more combo with your attacks. So could be pretty decent for some skills. It's a shame you can't use this on Bell, You can, I believe, use it on Gathering Storm. So I may end up using a build that does Ice Strike with Crescendo 2. What does this do? Final strikes can be performed twice in succession. Yeah, I might be doing Crescendo 2 with Ice Strike to build up the 4 combo to drop a bell. And if I can get enough bells down, then I get the 40% more damage on Gathering Storm, pop all the bells. It's something. Could be decent. It also, I think, will work well with Glacial Cascade. Because you are going to be doing a lot of damage with this skill to explode the frozen enemies or ice crystals. Here we are. Corrupting Cry. 1 and 2 no longer cause the supported skill to inflict corrupted blood, but instead it triggers a skill which inflicts corrupted blood. Interesting. Scaled by the level of the gem it is socketed into. Wonder what the reason is here. Maybe so you can actually scale the skill? I don't know. That kind of seems like what they're looking for here. Decaying Hex no longer causes support curse to inflict decay. Excuse me. It now instead, where we go? Support a curse to inflict decay. Instead, it triggers a skill which inflicts decay, scaled by the level of skill gem. Yeah, it does seem like maybe it is so that you can scale those skills a little bit higher. I imagine that was probably not doing as much damage as they wanted it to. We'll have to see what exactly this means. Reducing the quality. I imagine 10% might have been a bit much, especially considering the new Gemling Legionnaire quality bonus, and I'm sure 10% was hitting some breakpoints on some skill gems that were leading to some abuse cases, probably. So 5% I think is understandable. Deodre's Undoing no longer curse ground created from support skills to become hazards. It now causes curse ground created by supported skills to spawn witch toads on an interval, which seek out enemies and explode, dealing chaos damage. Interesting. I believe there is a quiver that spawns witch toads. Are these witch toads? No, it's not witch toads, so we'll have to see what witch toads are. Infernal Legion got, I think, a 50% nerf. Or 100% nerf, depending on how you look at it. Now grants minions from supported skills take 10% of their maximum life as fire damage per second, previously 20. And minions from supported skills ignite enemies within a radius of 1.5 meters, dealing a base fire damage equal to 10% of the minion's maximum life, previously 20%. Huge nerf. Huge nerf for sure. Infernal Legion 2. Increased radius from 0.5 meters from the previous one. Same damage. And it now grants 20% fire resistance to your minions. And Infernal Legion 3 doesn't exist. Living Lightning no longer replaces minions when summoning a new one, while already at the maximum number of minions. That just makes sense. So glad they did that. Morgana's Tempest got the Advancing Storm buff as well. Can now support any storm skill under any conditions, rather than only spells you cast yourself. Overabundance 3 now properly describes it cannot support persistent skills. Overextend can no longer be obtained. Existing items are unaffected by this change. Interesting. Not even reworking it, just removing it straight up. Oh boy. Packet? I read that as packet packed. Packets packed. Packets packed. No longer causes the supported skill to inflict corrupted blood, but instead it triggers a skill which inflicts corrupted blood. Yes, like we got with the other skills. No longer has lose 2% of maximum life per corrupted blood inflicted by supported skills. It now has supported skills cost 10% maximum life for each time they've been used recently, up to 30%. So if we pull up this support gem here, interesting. Okay. And Rage 1, 2, and 3 can now support minion skills. That's pretty cool. Definitely good for minions. Be interested to see what this looks like on some of the Spirit Walkers with the boss minions. See what they can do there. Ratha's Assault now grants supported skills load 4 bolts when you dodge, previously 5, and supported skills load 3 additional bolts, previously 4. Now also grants supported skills have 10% increased attack speed, previously 20. Interesting. Bit of a nerf. Across the board. Refraction 1 now additionally causes supported banner skills to grant allies deflection chance equal to 10% of their evasion rating, and the next one grants 20%. Shock Conduction 2 can no longer be obtained. Static Shocks, update description to clarify that it triggers from shocking hits. Keep going the wrong tab here. So I'm interested in if this will I wonder if you can attach multiple static shocks to one enemy. Maximum of 1 static shock to them. Okay. It says it on the gem. Wondering if that works on Tempests, the Rainstorm, whatchamacallit. I keep going to the wrong tab. Shock Conduction 2. Yeah. Yeah, they had to get rid of that. Okay. So no more easy shocks from the thunderstorm. That's what it's called. And now grants +2 level to supported skill gems if exactly 2 other supports are modifying them previously +3. Okay, so we brought down the plus levels on those support gems to +2. And this got a nice change. It's going to be the same damage ultimately, but it's going to take a little bit longer to get to those max stacks. So every meter you travel will give you 2% more lightning damage. 2% added lightning damage. So ultimately you'll end up with the same damage. You're just going to be able to get it without having to travel 3.3 meters. You'll be able to just travel 1 meter to get 1% damage if you really want to. It'll be more consistent. I think before, when you use the skill and you had 9 Voltaxic charge, you would consume all of 9 and not get any damage. Okay. So, that's all the skill gems and the support skills. So, let's... Probably gonna go over the unique items changes next. I also want to... there we go. So, it's some important player changes. Bleed damage on players is no longer increased while the player is moving. This change does not affect bleeds that the player applies to monsters. This is pretty nice. This is a nice change, especially with the visual clutter that we can get sometimes. It can be hard to tell if you do have a bleed on you. So not having as much concern for the bleed hits, and because energy shield builds got such a big hit, it's very nice that they at least get this change for if you're not CI and immune to bleed. At the very least, you're not going to be taking huge bleeds when you're moving. Your maximum runic ward is now added to your starting honor when beginning a trial of Sekhmet. Nice little additional buffer. I am curious, because you spend runic ward as a resource, like mana, does it go down when you spend it like a resource? I'm not sure how the builds that are CI, Eldritch Battery, Mind Over Matter do in Trial of Sekhmet. I don't know how their honor is calculated. If you're just mana and all damage is taken from mana first, with 1 life, no energy shield. If you spend your mana, does your honor go down? I know if your maximum values changes, your honor will change accordingly. But I don't know. The defense, this is huge right here. The defense's keyword is no longer in use. Existing uses of the word defenses now explicitly refer to armor, evasion, and energy shield, to make it clear that those modifiers do not apply to runic ward, resistances, block, or other forms of protection. This is purely a description change. So this was a very confusing keyword that they used for a while. Glad it is being removed. For the longest time, I thought it also meant mana. Only a single instance of leech per resource, life, mana, or energy shield can apply at a time. So if you have mana leech and life leech, you can have both of those at the same time. But if you've hit an enemy twice with an attack, it's only going to use the highest recovery rate value until it expires, after which the next highest recovery rate instance will apply. So if you hit for 10,000 and then you hit for 5,000, it's going to use the 10,000 hit until it's done its full recovery, and then it will apply the 5,000 recovery until that one would have expired. So it's not going to queue them. They're both going to be there on the stack, ticking down their duration. But when the first one runs out, it's going to use the remaining duration on the next highest recovery instance. I think this was probably necessary. Leech was pretty crazy. I am not a fan of how high some mana costs can get right now. It really keeps me from wanting to play caster builds. There are definitely good ways to sustain it, and you can get some leech sources, but I'm hoping at the very least attack builds can sustain their mana with a single leech node, assuming you do physical damage. It's also a shame that they don't really have a whole lot of support for mana leech that isn't specifically targeted for physical damage. They have Mark of Siphoning, which feels like a must in a lot of cases for attack builds. Which is a shame, because I also want to be using a curse, like Elemental Weakness. But that's not really possible. I don't know of any plus to curse limits that are easily available, and you can only have a mark or a curse active on an enemy, I believe. I may have to double check that though. You might be able to have a curse and a mark on an enemy at the same time. There's now a limit on the maximum amount of damage a hit can be considered to deal for leech. So hits that deal less than 40,000 total damage are unaffected, but if a hit would deal more than 40,000 total damage, it is treated as if it only dealt 40,000 damage for the purposes of leech calculation. The values of damage of each damage type in the hit are scaled down evenly to reach this limit. This means that extremely high damage hits stop improving leech past a certain point, but increasing your leech percentage will always increase the amount of resource you are gaining. So if we go back to Work of Siphoning. And we want to pull up Life Leech. When you deal damage with a hit, Leech causes you to recover an amount of the stated resource equal to the percentage of the damage you dealt. So monsters have leech resistance, So let's say we have 5% leech. So if I am correct here, if we have a 40,000 hit and we want to figure out what 5% of that is, 5% of a 40,000 hit is 2,000. So if we hit for 40,000 damage, we're getting a 2,000 leech. If we... That seems like way too much. If we have a 10% leech, that's 4,000 leech. So it does still seem like we will be able to get some substantial amount of leech. We're just not going to be getting absurd levels like we were reaching before when we were hitting for the millions. Formula for chance to deflect has been adjusted to provide better scaling with investment into deflection rating. It seemed incredibly hard to get a high deflection rating before, with a cap of 95% chance to deflect. So that's nice. New chance to deflect is 150 times 1 minus A, and A plus 0.12 times D, where A is the attacker accuracy and D is the defender deflection rating. This makes for a linear path that gets rewarded at higher investments. Okay. So reducing your attacker's accuracy will be a good way to get your deflection up. Blinding. I think blind is a reduction in accuracy still. Yes, so reducing their accuracy. Parry, shield block, and resonating shield no longer delay heavy stone buildup from decaying longer than expected. Okay. So, okay. So I believe what this means is you can use parry, build up heavy stun, and it won't stay built up on you for longer than you would have expected. So it should go down quicker now. Melee attacks can now only apply splash damage once per damaging area. Some attacks create multiple damaging areas during use. For example, Whirling Assault creates multiple damaging areas around you as you move. So we were definitely getting some instances where every single hit generated, for every enemy hit, there was an additional splash. So if you were playing a strike skill that did not use Tribal Fury, you were very much at a disadvantage when it came to AoE clear, and you dealt significantly more damage to groups of enemies. And I believe this is also the case for, and I don't have the intelligence for it. Whoa. So if we throw Ice Wall on the bar, every single instance, every single, every single chunk that you hit has an additional little AoE to it, causing for some pretty big shotguns. So they've adjusted it so you can no longer shotgun by getting strike splash damage. And it seems pretty consistent with what they're doing elsewhere in this game, is trying to remove instances of creating splash damage that overlaps with each other. For example, the changes to Gathering Storm. Minions affected by Last Grasp support, or Tekrod's Revenge lineage support, and totems affected by the unnamed Heartwood Oracle notable passive skill can no longer die during the effect from taking further damage exceeding their maximum life. That seems like it might have been a bug. So it's a good thing that got fixed. Stats worded as when you collect a remnant no longer give you benefits of these stats when an ally shares the effect of a remnant with you. So it sounds like if your ally is stacking, potentially stacking remnant effect, no, when you collect a remnant no longer gives the benefits of these stats when collected. Interesting. I'm not sure exactly what the instance this is, what exactly this is referencing, what the implications of that are. Updated the name of the buff that Trinity grants to Affinity, as Resonance is the name of a keystone passive skill. This is purely a description update, and Archon buffs are no longer inherently lost when you attack. Hell yeah. That's nice. I've been wanting to do some shenanigans with Archon, but it every single time I think about it, I end up not wanting to do it because I couldn't do a monk cast on crit build, for instance, that gets some Archon. Or looking at the, where'd that go? When we look at Infernalist, gain Elemental Archon when you cast a spell while on High Infernal Flame. Elemental Archon does not expire while you're on High Infernal Flame, and lose Elemental Archon on reaching maximum Infernal Flame. I think this is incredibly fun. I want to play more with the Elemental Archon stuff. I think the next build I mess around with is probably going to be some sort of Infernalist, if I get around to playing another build before League launch. and kind of messing around with some Archon stuff. So this is all about buffing your Archon stuff. Anyways, it's for another video. New content and features. So we have a bunch new of lineage supports. Very interested to see what we're gonna get here. Some of these may be leaked. Sometimes stuff appears in the has been gotten by data miners, but we'll just have to wait and see what we get here. We're getting some more unique items that we have seen before. Maybe some new ones as well. Voices we saw looks very strong. Mage Blood. Interested to see what that's going to be. Glad to see that these rings are coming in. Wonder if there's going to be a combined version. Oh, we get a lore weave. Confirmed. So save up your breach rings. The price checkability is great. Very excited for that feature coming. Added a reforging bench to the entrance of the Trial of Sekhmet. Alright. Sure, why not? And continued to incrementally improve the sound. Yada yada yada. We got a couple of Ascendancy changes here we can go over. The Acolyte of Chayula into the breach skill granted by the Waking Dream notable passive skill now grants leech 20% of your maximum life when you collect a red flame of Chayula, previously 15%. And the same buff for mana, 20% when you collect a blue flame. The wording of Into the Breach skill has also been updated to clarify behavior ranges related to Flames of Chayula. Into the Breach now applies modifiers to Remnant pickup range, at which Flames of Chayula can be seen. This is purely a visual change. Blood Mage is getting a leech buff. Now grants 20% of spell damage leeched as life, previously 10. They needed this buff to life leech based off of the changes to leech. Now that you can only have the one instance of leech. Chronomancer, the Rapid River notable skill, has been removed. We had the video going over the changes to Chronomancer with more detailed stuff on the locations and everything, but we'll still go over what they have in the patch notes. The Now and Again notable passive skill has been reworked, and it now grants cascadable spells have a 20% chance to echo, and repeatable spells have a 20% chance to repeat. So I was, based off of that, I was messing around with, did I take everything off this character? I did. I was messing around with a build that stacks some reduced duration with Orb of Storms and picks up Elemental Equilibrium So you drop 3 Aura of Storms with this and overextend. The duration runs out. You pick up 3 Cold Infusions, potentially more, with this passive here. And then you use... Where is it? You use Ice Nova with Spell Echo and Unleash. And you get these Unleash passives here to get the seal frequency. And you generate... You get enough elemental infusions to continually have enough elemental infusions in slight excess even to fully give all of the Unleashed and Echoed Ice Novas an infusion. I was testing this specifically on a Lich, so I was also gaining a power charge when I consume those infusions, for the purposes of getting the 40% more damage here, and taking some passives here so that I regain mana whenever I consumed a power charge. So it's a little bit of sustain. Damage didn't feel super great, honestly. The build definitely needs work, mostly just a test, but it has some real potential Ice Nova and Comet, because these are both repeatable and echoable skills. Because this is a 40% buff to skills that are both cascadable and echoable. They're repeatable and cascadable. The Unbound Encore notable passive skill has taken the previous position of Now and Again. The ultimate command notable now requires Unbound Encore. Added the new phased form notable passive skill, Preceding Footprints in the Sand. Phased form grants 30% less damage taken, and 4 seconds after being damaged by an enemy hit, take damage equal to 30% of that hit's damage. So it's a delay to that damage, but if you use the Temporal Rift skill granted by the next notable, it will remove any delayed damage from phase form. So it's a nice way to prevent yourself from being one-shot. And if you have Temporal Rift, you can turn that into just 30% less damage taken. But it's kind of gimmicky. I would rather take another build that has a better way of dealing with reducing the damage. Blood Mage turns that damage into a damage over time. In a similar fashion, Disciple of Varashta, is that right? Gets a lot of armor based on the energy shield stack, so it could be good. And the cast time of 0.1 seconds is really nice. The Inevitable Agony skill granted from the notable passive skill has been reworked. It is no longer a curse and has a 2-second cooldown. The debuff is now a life loss effect instead of a secondary hit damage, and the debuff amount is now displayed on static health bars. The debuff now instantly culls enemies with total life loss reaches culling strike threshold. Now grants debuff targets lose life equal to 20% of hit damage dealt to them, while debuffed previously 50%. The enemy curse effectiveness no longer applies to this skill, meaning unique enemies have the same effectiveness as previously, while other enemies have less. The debuff duration is now 12 seconds. So, nice. And quality now grants more area to the initial cast radius. Sands of Time buff granted by Quickened Hourglass notable passive now grants 1 to 60% increased skill speed, previously cast speed, and it has new visual effects. That's really nice. Opens up the door for non-casters. If we look at the Chronomancer Ascendancy, Sands of Time. Interesting. So, average 30% increased skill speed and 30% increased AoE on a scale that goes up and down. I'm interested in if these effects were... Oh no, they are reversed. Got it. So you'll have more AoE when your skill speed is slower, and vice versa. So you could be a non-caster build, at least with Chronomancer now, which is pretty nice. I still think having such a high variable in skill speed will feel a little bit clunky unless you are already using a very fast casting skill. Otherwise, especially if you are trying to self-cast Comet or something, casting Comet with 60% increased skill speed versus 1 is going to feel really bad sometimes. Because you're going to think you're casting it faster, but instead you have no cast speed and you're going to get stunned. Gemling Legionnaire. The crystalline potential notable passive skill has been removed. Added a new notable passive, Essence of Virtue, which grants the Virtuous Barrier skill, which, while active, conjures a glittering barrier that accumulates protective gemstone motes of each attribute type over time, but loses a random mote when you are hit. Didn't seem like a very strong defensive skill, but it does provide you some mana, life, energy shield, armor, evasion, based off of what your attribute requirements are. So its main purpose is to put a barrier between you and advanced thaumaturgy, which is going to grant you alternate quality effects to all existing gems. Time will tell what gems have some broken new quality stat. Moving on to Pathfinder, the overwhelming toxicity notable passive skill now grants 50% less poison duration, previously 35. That's substantial. The Running Assault notable passive now grants 30% less movement speed penalty while moving, previously 50. Substantial. I think Pathfinder was a very popular build in this last league, so let's pull it up. Pathfinder was fairly strong in this last league. So I think it's a little understandable that they are touching on those skill points. I don't know how strong poison was this last league, but it does seem, based off of the nerfs that they've done, that it was doing a lot of work. And we have Witch Hunter. Obsessive Rituals now grants 50% less armor and evasion. Previously 35% less. Pretty big. Less. 15% less than previous. Unfortunate. I'm not sure if that was truly necessary. Witch Hunter wasn't played very much, but that passive might have been pretty strong. And if we just want to pay our respects to Energy Shield, passive skill tree changes. Pretty sure a lot of these here are nerfs. Yeah. Some substantial nerfs to Energy Shield. A lot of it doing recovery rate, not max Energy Shield. We're getting some new companion passives. We're getting some more recoup on the skill tree. Archon of Undeath Cluster. Interested to see what that is. This is great. Ancestral Keystone passive now causes placing totems to not have a cost and not require consuming charges to place. It still causes totems to reserve 75 spirit, and it now doubles the totem limit instead of removing it completely. So I'm not sure what the limit on maximum number of totems is going to be now, but not having to consume charges to place them, great. Love to see it. Nice to see this change. Nice to see this change. It'll allow you to actually use companion skills easier now and not have to worry about your defenses. Val Pact now grants 50% more amount of life leached and 67% less life leech speed. Cannot recover life other than from leech, and life leech effects are not removed when unreserved life is filled. It no longer provides life leeches instant or cannot use life flasks. So cannot it allows you to use life flasks that generate rage. I know there's one that says when you get hit, generate rage. So that's nice that you can still use them even if they're not going to give you life. And the less life leech speed is interesting. I think if you have big hits, that this will be fairly substantial. But not being able to recover life other than from leech is gonna maybe cause some instances where you're walking on like burning ground, or you get a bleed and you can't get a leech off. That will cause you to die. So I'm gonna wrap up the patch notes here, I think. There is a lot more to go off of here. We have some buffs to some runes, it looks like. Looks like maybe some nerfs to the energy shield recovery rate on runes. A lot of fixed bugs. Looks like we're getting some more microtransactions for Path of Exile 2 from Path of Exile 1. This is nice. I'm not sure why we were getting a lesser mine rune before. And oh, I love this. I love this change, not having to visit the Halani gates in order to access Traitor's Passage if you've already rescued Risu. Felt like a pointless change, or felt like a pointless thing that they were having us do. I understand it might have been from the story reasons, but this will be nice to not have to go do. Anyways, if you stuck around this long, and if you are interested in seeing some more gameplay, I'm going to be doing League Start with probably a Ice Monk, a martial artist. Very original, I know. And as I get to the end game, I'm going to be offering Ascendancy carries for any of my subscribers who need them. And I'll also help anyone who wants to work on some Path of buildings. If you have any questions about what I'm playing or what you're playing, trying to make your build work, I'm happy to help. So if you want to drop me a subscribe or a follow, greatly appreciate any support you give, and I'll catch y'all on the next video.